The Providence Journal invited 8 public officials to discuss race in Rhode Island, our series about the state's changing population, the gaps that have developed among the races, and the consequences for all of us. Their comments will help shape public policy and set the climate for how we treat each other. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for participating. So I'll start with the first question. What have you learned from this series at all? Any surprises?
No, there were no surprises. I've learned that the disparities are a little more significant than I might otherwise have thought, but we all knew there were disparities and they're things that we work on, and we'll have to continue to work from a policy perspective to try to gap those disparities. Ultimately, we want a great community with a great quality of life that treats everybody fairly. And I hope for the day when it doesn't matter where your skin color is or where your nationality is, and we're just all people, and we all have the same benefits and opportunities in the state of Rhode Island and across the country.
Ed, you want to keep going?
Yeah. You talk about how Rhode Island stands out in some ways. We're an outlier in some regards, and one of them is that Rhode Island has the nation's 3rd highest probation rate. And in Providence, 1 out of every 11 men is on probation. There was a recent conference where former Superior Court Judge Judith Savage said there are too many people in prison and on probation, and too many of them are black and Hispanic. So, I was curious, why do you think so many people are on probation here, and what can you do about it up at the State House?
Well, we're studying it right now, and Judge Savage is doing a great job relative to that issue. I'm a practicing attorney. I do practice and have practiced in the criminal law field, and I do agree that our probationary periods are too long. If you go into the federal system, you have guidelines. They impose a sentence. You serve a big percentage of that sentence, and then you move on. In Rhode Island, you serve your sentence, but then you're on probation for the next 20 years. So the state has a hold of you for a very long period of time where your constitutional protections are no longer applicable to you. And the state does it from the perspective of trying to protect its citizens and make sure that people that have committed crimes don't go back to the same acts that they did in the past. But when you have a hold on someone for that period of time, you're basically telling them that somehow you're not wanted, or you're not entitled to the same opportunities as everybody else. Nobody should be on probation for a disparately long period, a disproportionately long period of time, and it's something that we have to look at. I've always felt it. When we fought the war on drugs, all of a sudden sentences started getting very, very high, and the results weren't that great. So you have to look through alternative type sentencing. You have to give people programs that are actually going to assist them and help them change themselves rather than just put them on probation forever and create a bureaucracy that's going to be held over their head for a very long period of time. So I think we have to become more realistic with that, and at the same time get better outcomes. Because when you can reintroduce people and rehabilitate people and make them productive members of society, we're all better off. We don't need people in prison. We need law-abiding citizens.
One of the things we've seen discussed in this series is white privilege. And we had former Senate Majority Leader David Carlin, who's now a professor at CCR. I wrote an op-ed the other day about white privilege. And he said if the average black is worse off than the average white in almost every category of well-being, health, wealth, income, education, high culture, gainful employment, etc. This is chiefly because of an appallingly dysfunctional subculture that's pervasive among the black lower classes. So what do you think of that? Do you agree with or disagree with Mr. Collin? And what's your, what does white privilege mean to you?
I'm not sure I've ever thought of the phrase white privilege. I don't think there is a white privilege, but I'm not sure that what he's referring to is in terms of subculture. I would say we have some disproportionate negative results, disproportionately negative results in terms of the outcomes for Caucasians and blacks, and there's got to be an underlying reason for that, and we have to address that. But I don't see it coming from a point of view of white privilege. I have absolutely never even imagined a phrase like that. I just, quite frankly, think he's wrong. Nobody has any privilege in our society. We're all equal, but for some reason, some people are not accessing as well, or they're not receiving the same benefit from what's there. I do know this. There are minority students that are thriving in Central Falls and Providence. They go on to great schools. And it's not the majority, but it can happen. The opportunity is there for those people that really engage and take advantage of the opportunity. Now, you have to be realistic and know and observe that a disproportionate percentage of minority communities don't take advantage of it, or they're not able to take advantage of it for whatever reason. And we have to figure out what the root cause of that is and work with the communities and enact policies that's going to change that. But it's not because of privilege, it's because there's a breakdown somewhere. I absolutely disagree with that phrase. I don't think anybody in society views any particular nationality as having any privilege over any other.
One of the ways that communities of color have been accessing a quality education in Rhode Island is through charter schools. 50%, more than 50% of students are Latino, another 14% are black. There's this ongoing debate about an perceived imbalance in the funding formula between charter schools and district schools. How can you balance that formula without harming these communities that you're talking about need more access to education?
Well, I mean, that's an entirely different discussion, but the problem with the charter school debate is I do believe that the charter schools are providing a good education to a limited number of students. But if you're taking a disproportionate amount of money away from the traditional public school and you're creating a competitive parallel system that's taking money out of the traditional public school, everyone looks at one side of the equation and says the charter school is doing such a good job for the limited number of students. Well, what about the majority of students that you've left behind in the school that's underfunded? That's where the problem is from my perspective, not the charter schools. I've never critiqued charter schools. I think they do a good job. But we have parallel systems. We can't afford two systems, and we have competitive systems, and no one has the answer for that.
But what about those black and Latino kids who are getting an education? If you move money away from them, what's going to happen to them?
Well, you're serving the minority of the minority community well, and you're hurting the overwhelming majority of the majority. So, I don't know. You decide. I think, I've always said, since day one in the General Assembly, you provide the same exact educational opportunity to every kid. Every kid in those districts doesn't have the same opportunity because it's a lottery to get in the charter school. So if you're siphoning off money and you're giving a select few a good opportunity, you're hurting the majority. And that's the problem with that. And that's something that nobody wants to wrestle with and wrap their arms around, but it's a real problem, and I don't believe we have the resources for two education systems. So it's unfair, in my opinion, to help the few at the expense of the majority. Every single kid in a district deserves the same exact opportunity, and that should be a great educational opportunity. So if you can't fund two systems, you got to merge them into one, and I don't know if you can do it at this point. The horse is out of the barn. But if you can't support two systems, the wise method of moving forward, strategy of moving forward, would have been one good system where every single kid in that system had the same opportunity. Every kid, I don't care if you're in Barrington, Central Falls, Woonsocket, or Cranston, every single child out there deserves the same exact opportunity. And I don't care what color you are, what nationality you are. Every kid deserves the opportunity. Education is the great equalizer.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. We'd like to do this again sometime.
Anytime, my pleasure.
Thank you.
So all you have to do next year is fix the economy, the justice system, and the educational system.